I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, spilling my guts on some Reddit thread about betrayal, but here I am. My name's Mark, and I just discovered that the woman I married, my wife, Lisa, has been cheating on me during our family vacation. Yeah, right in the middle of the trip we'd been planning for months, she was messing around with my best friend, Joe. To make it worse, she's pregnant. I found out because I saw the messages on her phone, the ones she tried to hide from me. It happened a few days ago, but I still feel the punch in my gut every time I think about it. We were down at the beach, the kids were splashing in the water, and Lisa was supposed to be taking pictures of everyone. I was just trying to relax, keep my head clear. But then I saw her phone sitting on her bag. She wasn't paying attention, and I saw the screen light up with a message from Joe. My stomach dropped when I saw the first few words. It wasn't just casual. It was heated, full of promises and plans, and I knew deep down that she'd been lying to me all along. I read a few more and saw her reply, "Can't wait to see you tonight, I've missed you so much." The words hit me like a punch. My hands went cold and my vision blurred around the edges. I grabbed her phone like I was in some kind of daze and scrolled through her messages. They had a whole conversation, hours worth of secret chats, and every sentence dripped with guilt and desire. I remember the words she'd written, their breathless tone. How she'd messaged him that she was so ready, how she told him she was pregnant but didn't want to keep it from him anymore. That last part, it was like a knife twisting in my gut. She was lying to me about everything, and she was using our vacation as her hiding spot. I felt the blood drain from my face and my palms grew damp with sweat. I didn't want to believe it. Not really. But that evidence was impossible to ignore. I looked over at her, standing a few feet away with a fake smile plastered on her face, taking pictures of our kids. My mind raced. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I just stood there, frozen. How long had she been doing this? Did she even care about me, about the family? I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I couldn't just walk up and accuse her out of nowhere. Not yet. I needed to think, to plan what I'd say. The betrayal was like a heavy weight pressing down on my shoulders, making every breath harder to take. That moment, watching her smile at the kids, I realized something. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about respect, trust, something she'd shattered in a heartbeat. I looked at the phone again, then at her. She caught my gaze and quickly pocketed her phone, pretending to be busy arranging the kids' towels. Her face was too calm, like she didn't have a care in the world. My fists clenched. I wanted to tear her apart right there, but instead I kept walking, trying to breathe through the storm inside me. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat in the dark of our hotel room. My mind kept circling back to those messages. Every detail, every sneaky word. I felt furious, betrayed, and oddly numb all at once. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How long had she been lying? And the worst part, I couldn't think straight because I was overwhelmed with a mix of shame, anger, and heartbreak. I didn't sleep that night, and I knew things couldn't go back to how they were. The truth was out, and now I had a decision to make. But one thing was clear: this wasn't going to be just a mourning period. It was going to be a fight. And I'd come up with a plan, a way to ensure she paid for what she'd done. Because if I learned anything from all this, it's that some betrayals demand more than just tears and apologies. They demand consequences, and I was done taking it lying down. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding head and a hollow feeling in my chest. The sun was filtering weakly through the curtains, casting a dull light over the room. I could hear the distant sounds of the kids fussing in the next room, their laughter and screams mixing with the crash of waves outside. It was supposed to be a family vacation, a getaway, but all I could think about was her. Lisa, the woman I trusted, the woman I loved, who had just shattered that trust into tiny, jagged pieces. I slipped out of bed quietly and went into the bathroom. Standing under the cold shower, I wrapped my hands around the edges of the sink and stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked tired, dark circles under my eyes, a stiff jaw I hadn't realized I clenched all night. I felt like a fool. How could I have been so blind? How did I miss all the signs? I remembered early on in our marriage how she'd sometimes be secretive about her phone. Little things like she'd always have to take calls in another room or hide her messages. I brushed those off at the time, thinking she was just private. But now, Those tiny red flags were a blazing alarm. I could kick myself for not noticing sooner. As I stared at my reflection, I started piecing things together. The way she'd get defensive if I touched her phone, the late nights she'd claim were work, the quick, nervous glances she'd shoot during dinner. All of it now made sense. She'd been hiding something and I'd been too blind or too scared to see it. When I stepped back into the room, my stomach churned. I knew I had to confront her. No more running around in circles. I needed to be direct, brutal even, because she'd crossed a line that couldn't be undone with words alone. I found her sitting on the balcony, staring out at the ocean. She looked lost in thought, but she straightened up when I approached. Her eyes flicked to mine and I saw the flicker of guilt or maybe fear, I couldn't tell which. "You lied to me," I said, voice steady but cold. "All this time you've been hiding something from me." She hesitated, then looked away. "Mark, I was going to tell you, you were going to. That's rich. You think you can just brush this off." I took a step closer. "I saw the messages, Lisa. The ones you tried to hide. You're pregnant, aren't you?" Her face paled. She stared at her hands, silent. "You're pregnant and you're cheating on me with Joe," I said, voice shaking with rage. "And you think you can tell me it's just some mistake, some accident? No, no way, you've been lying the entire time. How long has this been going on?" She finally looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not what it looks like. Save it," I snapped. "You don't get to spin this any longer. I know everything, and I swear I will make sure you regret this. You betrayed me, our family. How could you do this?" She started crying now, big tears rolling down her cheeks. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. Sorry." I cut her off. "Sorry doesn't cut it, not anymore." My voice was like a cold blade. "You think you can just walk away from this, from us, from everything we built?" She looked desperate, clutching her stomach like she wanted to say more, but I had already made up my mind. I knew I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. I needed to teach her a lesson, something she'd never forget, something that'd leave her aching for what she'd thrown away. I didn't tell her what I was planning then. No, I had a different course of action. I just told her, "We're done. I want you out of the house today, and don't contact me unless it's about the kids. I'm done playing nice." She begged, pleaded, tears falling faster now, but I didn't waver. I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen. I grabbed my phone, pulled out my notes, and started drafting the plan that would completely turn her world upside down. It was time she learned that betrayal comes with consequences, and I wasn't going to be the one to pay for her mistakes anymore. She pushed me too far. The game was on, and I was ready to see her fall. As I walked away from her, stepping into the hallway, I whispered under my breath, "You're going to regret this, Lisa, I promise you that." And I knew I had to be patient, calculated. The revenge would be sweet, and I'd make sure she paid the price for breaking my trust. What she didn't know yet was that I had already started to plan her downfall, and it was going to be so quiet, so precise, she'd never see it coming. After I told her to get out, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage swirling inside me. On one hand, I'd finally confronted her face to face, broken the illusion, and made it clear I wasn't going to accept her betrayal. On the other, my stomach was still twisted with fury. I spent the rest of that day trying to focus on the kids, pretending everything was fine, but inside I was already scheming. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept turning over the details, her tears, her pleas, the fact that she'd been so brazen about her affair. I kept going back to the messages, to the fact that she was pregnant with Joe's kid. The betrayal was so deep it felt like I'd been punched in the chest every time I thought about it. I didn't even realize how much I'd been holding back, how much I'd let her take from me until it all spilled over that morning. I knew I had to get ahead of her. Whatever she was planning next, I had to be prepared. I started to draw up a plan, one that would teach her she couldn't cheat and get away with it. I wasn't interested in some petty revenge. This had to be calculated. Final, I wasn't a guy who'd just storm out and scream. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, see what it meant across me. First, I needed leverage. I figured the best way to do that was to gather evidence of her ongoing affair, proof that she couldn't deny. Her phone was the obvious starting point, but I wanted more. I remembered where she kept her secret stash of messages, hidden folders, even some of her emails. I had to be careful, though. I couldn't risk her catching me snooping. Over the next few days, I kept my eyes open. I'd check her phone when she wasn't around, look at her social media, keep an ear open for anything suspicious. My plan wasn't just about catching her. No, I wanted to make sure she knew I was onto her, that I was serious. I even considered planting some false clues, something to make her sweat a little more, to make her realize I wasn't going to fold. Meanwhile, I made arrangements to have some people I knew dig into her phone, her email, and even her social media activity. I needed concrete proof, and I wanted her to know I wasn't bluffing. If she thought she could just cheat on me, get pregnant, and then walk away, she was dead wrong. I was going to make her pay, and I was going to do it with cold precision. During one of my late-night searches, I found a hidden folder on her laptop, something she thought was safe. Inside was a folder of pictures, photos of her with Joe, and a few of her visiting his apartment. Small, blurry shots, but enough for me to see her face, her smile, her secret moments. That was the icing on the cake. She'd been so reckless, so sure she could hide everything. But I had her. I also reached out to a friend who was good with legal stuff. I asked about my options, what I could do if I decided to go full courtroom. I wasn't there yet, but I wanted to know what I was fighting for. Once I had the evidence, I could decide whether to confront her again or just cut everything off and go straight to the lawyers. I could feel my jaw tightening every time I remembered her lying, her sneaking around. That ache in my chest grew stronger, but I kept it from showing. No, now I was calculating, cold and ruthless. I'd learned that if you want justice, sometimes you have to be the one to deliver it. Not with fists, but with proof, with plans. That's what I was working on now. So I kept gathering. I kept waiting for the right moment for her to slip up again, because I knew she would. And when she did, I'd be ready. I wanted her to feel what I felt, completely betrayed, utterly powerless. That was the only way this would end, and I was determined to make sure it did. The next move was hers, but I already knew she was walking into a trap she'd set herself. All the pieces were falling into place, and I was just about to make the final move. The question now was, how long could I keep up the act of pretending everything was okay? The answer, not much longer. I'd strike when she least expected it, and there'd be no turning back. The days dragged on, each one feeling heavier than the last. I kept up the facade of being normal, but inside I was already miles ahead of her. Every minute spent pretending was just another moment I used to sharpen my plan. I had the evidence, the proof that she'd been lying, sneaking around, and I was ready to use it at the right moment. What I didn't expect was how quickly she started acting more paranoid. She'd often check her phone obsessively, like she was trying to hide something even more. She'd whisper to herself when she thought I wasn't listening, like she was planning her own escape route. That's when I knew I had her right where I wanted her. Her fear was the sign that my plan was working. One evening she sat across from me at dinner trying to act normal. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her napkin, stealing glances at her phone. I let her sweat. I knew she was feeling the pressure, the looming sense that she was about to get caught. "Lisa," I finally said, voice low and steady, "you've been acting funny lately. What's going on?" She forced a weak smile. "Nothing, I'm just tired. Vacation's been stressful, that's all." "Really?" I leaned in slightly. "You know, I saw the messages. Ones you tried to hide on your phone. You're pregnant, Lisa, and you're still seeing Joe." Her eyes widened, panic flashing behind them. She looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She just swallowed hard and looked away. That was all the confirmation I needed. "You lied to me," I said, voice cold, "and I want to know why. How long has this been going on?" She finally looked back at me, tears welling again. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't know what to do. I was scared you'd leave, and Joe, he made me feel alive again." I shook my head slowly. "You made a choice, Lisa. You chose to cheat, to betray everything, and now I'm done. I've been planning this for days, gathering everything I need to make sure you see what you've done." She looked stunned, like I'd punched her in the gut. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about consequences," I said. "You're going to regret this, Lisa. The lie, the affair, everything. I'm not going to let you walk away and pretend this never happened." Her hands trembled. "Please, Mark, I love you. I don't want to lose my family." "Love," I scoffed. "That's rich. You've already lost it, along with my trust, and you're going to pay for that mistake." I pulled out my phone and showed her the complete set of evidence I'd collected, the photos, the messages, everything. Her face turned ghostly pale as she stared at the screen. "Do you see this?" I asked. This is what you did. You thought you could keep hiding it, but I found you out. And I've got plenty more where that came from if I need it. She broke down crying now, begging, trying to plead her way out of it. It's not what it looks like, Mark. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I want us to fix this. I just shook my head. Fix it? You think you can just apologize and everything's fine? No, you crossed a line I can't come back from. I've decided what I'm going to do next. She looked terrified. What are you going to do? I'm going to file for divorce, I said, voice firm, and I'm going to make sure you understand exactly what you lost. You might think you're going to walk away with a new life, but I won't let you forget the damage you caused. She begged me, tears pouring down her face, but I wasn't swayed. My mind was made up. I had my game plan and I was going to execute it perfectly. I'd already started laying the groundwork, talking to lawyers, hiding some of the evidence, and making sure I had everything in order. I saw her eyes searching mine, desperate. Please, Mark, don't do this, she whispered. Too late, I said quietly. You made your choice. Now you're going to live with the consequences. As I turned to leave the table, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I knew I was about to burn everything to the ground, and part of me felt guilty. But another part, it was finally free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, the false promises. I left her sitting there, crying and defeated. The plan was in motion, and I could already feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. It was time to finish what I started. And when I finally handed her those keys, those legal papers, I'd know I'd done right by myself. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to burn it all down first and then rebuild from the ashes. The fallout was almost immediate. I got back to the house that evening, feeling that strange mix of relief and adrenaline. I knew I'd set everything in motion. She had no idea what was coming, but I could feel it brewing. I'd already contacted a lawyer and I had all the evidence laid out, ready for the next step. I wanted her to understand this wasn't just a quick blow-up. It was the end of everything she'd built with me. She was still at the table when I got home, her face blotchy, eyes swollen, like she'd run a marathon in tears. She looked up at me, her voice trembling. Mark, I'm sorry, I really am. I shook my head slowly, feeling a cold, heavy resolve settle in my chest. Sorry. Sorry doesn't fix what you did. Sorry doesn't undo the damage you caused. I put a folder on the table filled with screenshots, texts, photos, everything I'd collected. Do you see this? I asked. This is your betrayal and I've got more, so don't even try to deny it anymore. She looked at the evidence, her face turning gray. You're serious? Dead serious, I said. I'm going to file for divorce first thing tomorrow, and I'm going to take everything, our house, the kids, whatever you think you're entitled to, because you don't get to just walk away from this, not without consequences. She looked like she wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she sank back into her chair, clutching her stomach again as if she already felt the weight of what was coming. I walked to the window, staring out at the dark night outside. My hands were clenched, my mind racing. I'd thought about this moment for days, planning every detail. Now that it was here, I could feel the adrenaline surging, making my limbs feel stiff and my mind laser-focused. I knew I needed to be calm, cold, precise. That's what would hit her hardest, knowing I had everything ready, that she had no hope left. I glanced back at her and said, You should start packing. You're leaving tomorrow, and don't bother trying to contact me or the kids until I say so. She nodded slowly, tears streaking her cheeks again, but she didn't argue. She knew the game was over. She pushed me too far, and now she'd face the consequences. I could tell she was realizing she'd lost everything, her family, her reputation, her future, and it was her own doing. I poured myself a glass of water, trying to steady my breathing. I'd always thought I was a patient guy, but this betrayal had shattered my patience. The plan was simple: get her out, get the divorce rolling, and move on. But I also knew I wanted her to understand the pain she'd caused. That's why I'd keep the evidence accessible, keep her guessing, and make her realize that every move she made from now on would be under my control. The next morning, I got up early, went to the lawyer's office, and handed over all the documentation. We drafted the papers. They were brutal but fair. I wasn't asking for revenge just to hurt her. I wanted justice. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, like everything she believed in was crumbling around her. By noon, I had the divorce papers signed and ready to file. I met her at the door with the folder in my hand. She looked at me, her eyes dull, her face streaked with tears. "You're serious about this?" she whispered. "More than ever," I said. "Here's the paperwork, your keys, your chance to start fresh, but don't try to contact me or the kids." Her hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. "I never wanted it to come to this." "I know," I said coldly, "but you made the choice. Now live with it." I handed her the keys to her apartment, and she took them quietly like she'd already accepted her fate. I turned and walked away, my stomach feeling hollow but my mind free from the chaos I'd carried for so long. As I watched her disappear out the door, I realized that sometimes the only way to truly reclaim yourself is to cut the toxic parts out, no matter how much it hurts. I'd done that. I'd walked through fire and I'd come out the other side. But every scar, every memory would stay with me. And I'd be stronger from it. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and never looking back. Days turned into weeks and I kept my distance. Every morning I woke up feeling lighter, like a burden had been lifted off my chest. The house was quieter, emptier, but strangely, that silence was a relief. I no longer had to watch her lie, no longer had to pretend everything was okay. I could finally breathe again, even if the ache in my heart still lingered. The divorce was finalized without much fuss. She signed the papers quietly, almost as if she knew she'd lost her last battle. I handed over the keys to her apartment, watched her walk away with her head down. It was the last time I saw her, the woman who had betrayed me not just once but repeatedly, in ways I couldn't even begin to forgive. I felt a strange mixture of victory and emptiness. Yeah, I had won the war. I'd taken everything back, even if the scars would stay with me forever. But beneath that there was a hollow space, a quiet recognition that trust, something I once believed was rock solid, was now shattered beyond repair. Still, I knew I had done what I needed to do. I reclaimed my life piece by piece, and I refused to let her ruin me further. Looking back, I realized the importance of boundaries and honesty. I learned that sometimes the best way to fight back isn't with anger or revenge for revenge's sake, but with clarity and action. That day I found her messages, I made a decision. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I no longer hid from the pain, but faced it head-on with a plan to rebuild. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a sting of regret or sadness, but it was overshadowed by a stubborn sense of pride. I'd survived something I thought I wouldn't. And more than that, I learned that sometimes walking away is the biggest act of strength you can do. Now, I focus on my kids, making sure they're okay, giving them the love they need. I've blocked out the toxic memories, stored the evidence away, and moved forward. It's not perfect, and I probably never will fully forget, but I have control now. That's what matters. To anyone who's facing something similar, here's what I've learned. Trust is fragile. When it's broken, the only real choice is whether you let it define you or you take control. Getting revenge, it's tempting, sure. But at the end of the day, reclaiming your peace, your dignity, that's the real victory. So I walk into my new life, knowing I took the painful road, but also knowing I'm stronger for it. Because sometimes walking away isn't surrender, it's the only way to truly win. And I'm finally winning my peace back.